Hello, Tal. Good evening, Omanel 1000. Holding point, runway 27 left, ready for takeoff, Omanel 1000.
Oman Air 1000, Philadelphia Tower. Good evening, sir. Flight heading 230, wind 300 at 10, runway 27 left, clear for takeoff.
Clear takeoff, and after the departure, we are to take the heading 230 left, Omanel 1000. Bird strike and ditching. Introduction. Hello, aviators and air traffic controllers around the world. This is Ray Cardozo and welcome to our Clear to Climb lessons, the ultimate solution for your ICAO test. You are about to start one more lesson and interact lesson. Today's topic is bird strike and ditching. This is a story of heroes. We will always begin the lesson with the read-through. We are going to use the case of the terrible accident with the US Airways Flight 1549 that splashed down in the Hudson River after experiencing a loss of thrust on both engines after the ingestion of a flock of birds. The birds were geese, in fact, right? So this is the read-through for bird strike and ditching main text. Let's get started. Bird strike and ditching main text. At 15:24 UTC time, LaGuardia Tower clears flight 1549 for takeoff on runway 04. The first officer was taking off, and after the liftoff, the captain calls out, "Positive rate." Well, the first officer asks, "Gear up, please." They call the US Airways airplanes by the nickname Cactus, and LaGuardia Tower tells or told them to call the departure control. LaGuardia Tower said, "Cactus 1549 contact New York departure, good day." The first officer asks the captain to engage the roll mode. He says, "Heading select, please." On his first contact with the New York departure control, the pilot says, "Cactus 1549, 700, climbing 5,000. He wanted to say that he was passing 700 feet and that he was climbing to 5,000 feet. The departure control then responds, "Cactus 1549, New York departure radar contact, climbing maintain 15,000. Maintain 15,000, Cactus 1549. The captain read back. In the past, right? Read back present, read back past. So he said, in the past. Thereafter, he says to his co-pilot, 15. The captain confirms to his first officer as if saying that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet, and he did this to confirm as he selected 15,000 feet on the altitude selector on the MCP, the mode control panel. He meant that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet. His intention was to tell his co-pilot that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet. By the way, Clear to Climb is the name of our lessons and one of our websites. The first officer acknowledges or reads back 15 climb. Because it is in the present and it is in the third person, we say reads back and acknowledges. The captain states, "Climb set," after setting the climb thrust on the engines. Here I want to call your attention, do not say thrust or thrust, say thrust, again, thrust, yeah. He was the pilot monitoring, and his co-pilot was the pilot flying that day. As they start to speed up and retract the flaps, the first officer asks, "And flaps 1, please." As they start to speed up, he requested the captain to retract the flaps. The captain then responds, "Flaps 1," as he retracted the flaps. Because to retract the flaps you need speed, right? You need the aircraft accelerating. This was a routine flight, and they were absolutely calm. The captain said, "Oh, what a view of the Hudson today, huh? Great, Captain Sullenberg." Unfortunately, they did not expect that the beautiful view would be their landing place in the next few minutes. The airplane continued climbing and accelerating, and the co-pilot asked, "Flaps up, please, and after takeoff checklist." The captain responded, "Flaps up," and thereafter, after takeoff checklist complete. Soon thereafter, the captain shouts, "Birds, we got one rolling back." Both of them are rolling back. They were experiencing a loss of thrust on both engines, which is the same thing as saying that both engines were rolling back. And he added, as he takes the first steps, "Ignition start, I'm starting the APU." At this very moment, the captain takes over the controls. He says, "My aircraft." And the first officer responds, "Your aircraft." The captain starts managing the emergency situation, and he starts by asking his co-pilot to grab the QRH. He starts to manage the emergency situation. Remember, they were in an emergency. He started by asking his co-pilot to grab the QRH, right? To grab the QRH. Quick reference handbook. He called for the appropriate checklist. Loss of thrust on both engines, no normal checklist. They were losing thrust on both engines, so he asked for the loss of thrust on both engines, no normal checklist. Up until this moment, the New York departure controller wasn't aware of the emergency situation, and he started vectoring the airplane. Cactus 1549 turned left heading 270. Almost at the same time, Cactus 1549 calls and says, "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Cactus 1549, hit birds. We have lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia." He declared emergency by saying "Mayday, mayday, mayday," and the co-pilot went on to say, "We have lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia." The controller then says, "Okay, yeah, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading 220. In the meantime, the controller calls his colleague in control tower back at LaGuardia and says, "Tower, stop your departures. We got an emergency returning." It's 1549. He had a bird strike. He lost all engines. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately. The controller in LaGuardia Tower then asks the controller in the departure control, "Understood, the Cactus 1549 has an engine problem. Which engine?" "He lost thrust on both engines," said the New York departure controller. "Got it," answered the tower controller at LaGuardia Tower, or at LaGuardia Airport, the departure point, right? "Cactus 1549, if we can get it to you, do you want to try to land on runway 13? The controller said to the pilot. "We are unable. We may end up in the Hudson." The captain responded to the controller's inquiry. The co-pilot reads and does the emergency checklist as they prepare for a ditching. The co-pilot then goes on to state, following the checklist instructions, "ATC notify, Squawk 7700, said the first officer to the captain, and he acknowledges. The captain then says to his co-pilot, "The left one is coming back up a little bit." And the co-pilot continues reading and doing the checklist. "Distress message, transmit, we did." The controller then says, "Alright, Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31. "Unable," said the captain. "Cactus 1549, runway 4 is available if you want to make left traffic to runway 4. "Left traffic to runway 4. He suggested the pilot to make left traffic to runway 4. The captain responded, "I'm not sure we can make any runway." Soon thereafter he says, "What's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro?" "Okay, yeah, off to your right side is Teterboro Airport." In the meantime, the co-pilot was also trying to relight at least one engine, but that was impossible. The controller said, Do you want to try and go to Teterboro? The captain responded, yes. Then the departure controller immediately calls his colleague in or at Teterboro Tower and says, Teterboro, LaGuardia departure got an emergency inbound. Okay, go ahead, says the controller in Teterboro. Cactus 1549 over the George Washington Bridge wants to go to the airport right now. He wants to go to our airport right now. Check. Does he need any assistance? The controller then responds, yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1? Runway 1, that's good, said the controller at Teterboro Tower. At this moment, the captain transmits over the PA. This is the captain, brace for impact. But the controller wasn't aware of the captain's decision. He said, Cactus 1549, turn right 280 degrees, you can land on runway 1 at Teterboro. The captain responded, we can't do it. Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro? Asked the controller. We're gonna be in the Hudson, said Captain Sullenberger. I'm sorry, say again, Cactus, responded the controller in total disbelief. The co-pilot eventually said, no relight, 250 feet in the air, the first officer informed. Cactus 1549, radio contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport off your 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. Cactus 1549, are you still on? The controller was still trying to help out, but it was in vain. The captain was involved with the final steps for the ditching. Got any ideas? Asked the captain. Actually not, answered his co-pilot. Cactus 1549, if you can, you got runway 29 available at Newark off your 2 o'clock in 7 miles. Well, 2 minutes after the initial bird strike, the captain announces over the PA, this is the captain, brace for impact. Oh my god, a terrible situation, isn't it? Just a little less than 6 minutes after beginning the takeoff roll, the airplane splashes down in the Hudson River. It was a ditching. After ditching, the airplane stayed afloat for a long time. The crew completed the passenger evacuation procedure and nobody got hurt. Okay, this is the end of the read-through. Now we're going to start the question and answer part, right? The listen and interact lesson. This is the most powerful part of all sets of lessons. Relax, have fun, and enjoy it. Bird strike and ditching. Listen and interact lesson. At 15:24 UTC time, LaGuardia Tower clears Flight 1549 for takeoff on runway 4. What does LaGuardia Tower clear? LaGuardia Tower clears Flight 1549 for takeoff on runway 04. So the tower clears the takeoff. And at what time did LaGuardia Tower clear Flight 1549 for takeoff? At 15:24 UTC time, right? At 15:24 UTC time, LaGuardia Tower clears or cleared Flight 1549 for takeoff on runway 04. Or to take off on runway 04. For takeoff, a noun with a hyphen. To take off, a verb without a hyphen. A phrasal verb, right? The first officer was doing the takeoff. And after the liftoff, the captain calls out, positive rate. Who was doing the takeoff? Who was doing the takeoff? The first officer, right? The first officer was doing the takeoff, and after the liftoff, the captain calls out positive rate. Okay, after the liftoff, the moment in which the wheels, the landing gear, leaves the ground, and the captain calls out positive rate. What does the captain call out? Positive rate, right? The captain calls out positive rate. And when does the captain call out positive rate? After the liftoff. After the liftoff, the captain calls out positive rate. Well, the first officer asks, "Gear up, please." Now, what does the first officer ask? According to the statement, okay? The previous statement, the question is based on the previous statement. He asks the captain to put the landing gear up, right? Or to retract the landing gear, or still to raise the landing gear. That's what the first officer meant when he said, "Gear up, please." And when does the first officer ask, "Gear up, please"? After the captain called out positive rate. After the captain called out positive rate, the first officer asks, "Gear up, please." And why does the first officer only ask gear up after the captain called out positive rate? Well, obviously, because we need a positive rate. We need a positive rate before retracting the landing gear, right? So he asks, "Gear up, please." A very kind co-pilot, right? They call the US Rays airplanes by the nickname Cactus. Nickname. Do you have a nickname? Do you like your nickname? Good. LaGuardia Tower instructs them to call the departure control. They said, "Cactus 1549, contact New York departure, good day." Who did the controller tell them to call? New York departure, right? Okay, they told them, the controller told them to contact or to call New York departure. He said, "Contact New York departure, good day." The first officer asks the captain to engage the row mode. He says, "Heading select, please." Now, does the co-pilot ask his captain to engage the pitch mode, right? No, not the pitch mode. He said, "Heading select, please." And the heading select is a row mode, not a pitch mode. So he asked the captain to engage a row mode or the row mode, right? On his first contact with New York departure control, the pilot says, "Cactus 1549, 700, climbing 5,000. And remember, in the ICAO test, one of the skills that you have to show is the ability to rephrase, the ability to retell one situation. What are one of the skills that you have to show in the ICAO test? One of the skills that you have to show is the ability to rephrase, the ability to retell one situation. So, what did the captain want to say on his first contact? Well, he wanted to say that he was passing 700 feet and that he was climbing to 5,000 feet. That's what he wanted to say. The departure control then responds, "Cactus 1549, New York departure radar contact, climb and maintain 15,000. Now, was the flight 1549 on radar contact? Yes, it was. On initial contact, the controller said radar contact, right? And this meant that the flight was on the radar screen. Okay, mean in the present, meant in the past. To which altitude did the controller authorize them to climb? To which altitude? To 15,000 feet, right? The controller said, "Cactus 1549, New York departure, radar contact, climb and maintain 15,000. The captain read back, maintain 15,000 feet, Cactus 1549. What is Cactus 1549? What means Cactus 1549? What is it? It's the call sign, right? In fact, the call sign is US Airways 1549. Cactus is only the nickname. What did the captain do? Exactly, he read back in the past. He acknowledged, right? He said, maintain 15,000. Thereafter, he says to his co-pilot, 15. The captain confirms to his first officer as if saying that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet. So he said, 15. And what did he mean by that? What did he mean by 15? By that, he meant, again, in the past, mean, present, meant, past. He meant that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet. Again, what was the captain's intention when saying this? What did he mean by that? His intention was to tell his co-pilot that they were clear to climb to 15,000 feet. The first officer acknowledges 15, climb. Now, does the co-pilot acknowledge? Yes, he does. He acknowledges. After setting the climb thrust on the engines, the captain states, climb set. It refers to the N1 limit, right? Did the captain set the climb thrust? Yes, he did. He was the pilot monitoring, right? He was the pilot monitoring, and his co-pilot was the pilot flying that day. Who was the pilot monitoring that day? I'm waiting for your answer. Give an answer. Yes, the captain, right? The captain was the pilot monitoring that day. As they start to speed up and retract the flaps, the first officer asks, and flaps 1, please. Now, did the first officer request the captain to retract the landing gear? Tell me. Stay focused. No. He requested flaps 1, right? Not the gear. And when did the co-pilot ask the captain to retract the flaps? As they start to speed up, right? As they start to speed up, he requested the captain to retract the flaps. We need speed, okay, to retract the flaps. The captain then responds, flaps 1, as he retracted the flaps. Now, what does the captain respond? Flaps 1. The captain responds, flaps 1, or responded, flaps 1. That was a routine flight and they were absolutely calm. Were they nervous? No, absolutely not. This was a routine flight and they were absolutely, definitely calm. The captain said, "Oh, what a view of the Hudson today." Now, was the captain enjoying the scenery of the Hudson? He was. He said, "Oh, what a view of the Hudson today, huh?" "Yeah," said the co-pilot. Unfortunately, they did not expect that the beautiful view would be their landing place in the next few minutes. So observe, we have two that. Expect that beautiful. Well, first one is the relative pronoun and the second one is the demonstrative pronoun. That beautiful view. What would that place be in the next few minutes? Unfortunately, their landing place, right? That beautiful place, okay, would be their landing place in the next few minutes. Did they expect to land on the Hudson? No, they did not. It was a routine flight, and they were absolutely calm. Again, did they expect to splash down on the Hudson River? No, they did not. They expected to land at their destination, not on a river. The airplane continued climbing and accelerating, and the co-pilot asked, "Flaps up, please, and after takeoff checklist." What did the airplane continue to do? What did the airplane continue to do? The airplane continued climbing and accelerating, and the co-pilot asked, "Flaps up, please, and after takeoff checklist." What did the co-pilot ask? What did he ask? He asked, "Flaps up, please, and after takeoff checklist." The captain responded, "Flaps up." And thereafter, after takeoff checklist complete. So, was the after takeoff checklist complete at this time? Yes, it was. The captain stated, "After takeoff checklist complete." Soon thereafter, the captain shouts, "Birds, we got one rolling back. Both of them rolling back." What does the captain shout? He shouts, "Birds, we got one rolling back. Both of them rolling back." What were rolling back? What were rolling back? Exactly. Both engines were rolling back, which is the same thing as saying that the engines were decelerating uncommanded. Now, were they experiencing a loss of thrust on both engines? That is exactly right. They were experiencing a loss of thrust on both engines, which is the same thing as saying that both engines were rolling back. And he added as he takes the first steps. Ignition start. I'm starting the APU. The captain was accomplishing the memory items and reading aloud. What was the captain doing? The captain was accomplishing the memory items and reading aloud. Which devices did the captain start first? The ignition and the APU, right? He said, "Ignition start. I'm starting the APU." So he started first the ignition and the APU. Why did he start the APU? Well, obviously to supply power to the airplane in case the engines were cut off, right? If the engines were shut down, they would need electrical power from the APU to supply the airplane's electrical system. They would need electrical power from the APU to supply the airplane's electrical system. At this very moment, the captain takes over the controls. He says, "My aircraft." And the first officer responds, "Your aircraft." Does the captain take over the controls? Yes, he does. He said, "My aircraft." Meaning that from that moment on, he was the pilot flying. So, who was the pilot flying from that moment on? The captain, right? From the moment on, the captain was the pilot flying. The captain starts managing the emergency situation, and he starts by asking his co-pilot to grab the curage, right? What does the captain start to do? He starts to manage the emergency situation. Remember, they were in an emergency, a serious one, by the way. What did he start by? He started by asking his co-pilot to grab the curage. He called for the appropriate checklist. Lots of thrust on both engines, no normal checklist. What did the captain do next? I'm going to wait here until you give an answer. Give an answer, please. What did the captain do next? Exactly right. He asked for the appropriate checklist on the curage. And which checklist did he ask for? Loss of thrust on both engines. They were losing thrust on both engines. So he asked for the loss of thrust on both engines, no normal checklist. Up until this moment, the New York departure controller wasn't aware of the emergency situation, and he started vectoring the airplane. Cactus 1549, turn left heading 270 degrees. Was the controller already aware of the situation on board of Flight 1549? No, not up until then. He thought that everything was under control. So as always, he started vectoring them to steer, right? To steer the airplane along their planned route, right? Like giving directions, steering them. So, did the controller start vectoring the airplane? Yes, as always, he did. He said, Cactus 1549, turn left heading 270. So he positively started vectoring the Flight 1549. Why? Why did the controller start vectoring the airplane? Well, obviously, to steer the airplane or to steer the pilots along their planned route, right? Almost at the same time, Cactus 1549 calls and says, Mayday, 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 Cactus 1549 hurt birds. We have lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia. Now, did the pilot declare emergency? Yes, he declared emergency by saying Mayday, 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 right? Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And he added, we have lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia. Okay, we are turning back towards LaGuardia. What was the pilot's intention? To turn back towards LaGuardia, right? He said, we have lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia. The controller then says, okay, yeah, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading 220 Cactus 1549. Did the controller start vectoring the Cactus to return to LaGuardia? Yes, the controller started vectoring the Cactus to return to LaGuardia. He said, okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading of 220 Cactus 1549. In the meantime, the controller calls his colleague in control tower back at LaGuardia and says, stop your departures, tower. We got an emergency returning. So, who does the controller in the departure control call? Who? It's a person, right? His colleague in control tower back at LaGuardia, right? In the meantime, the controller calls his colleague in control tower back at LaGuardia and says, Tower, stop your departures. We got an emergency returning. What did he say to his colleague? Tower, stop your departures. We got an emergency returning. That's what he said. What did he ask to his colleague back in LaGuardia Tower? Well, he asked his colleague, his job mate, right? He asked him to stop the departures because he had an emergency returning to LaGuardia. That's what he asked. What was the departure airport? What was the departure airport? LaGuardia, right? LaGuardia was the departure airport, and the Cactus 1549 intended to return to LaGuardia after hitting a flock of birds. So Cactus 1549, they intended to return to the departure airport. Now, did the controller in the departure control want the controller in LaGuardia Tower to stop the departures? Yes, he did. Or yes, he wanted. He said, Tower, stop your departures. We got an emergency returning. That's what he said. His colleague then asks, who is it? Now, did the controller at LaGuardia Tower want to know who was it? Who was the airplane? Absolutely. He asks, who is it? So he definitely wanted to know who it was. And he answers, it's 1549, he had a bird strike, he lost all engines, he lost the thrust in the engines, he's returning immediately. The controller in LaGuardia Tower then asks the controller in the departure control, Cactus 1549, which engines? He lost thrust on both engines, said the New York departure controller. Got it, answered the tower controller at LaGuardia Airport. Now, did the controller at LaGuardia understand? Yes, he understood. He said, got it. Cactus 1549, if we can get it to you, do you want to try to land on runway 13? What did the controller suggest that the pilot try? Waiting for your answer. Give me an answer based on the statement, okay? Always. So what did the controller suggest that the pilot try? Well, he suggested that the pilot try to land on runway 13, right? That's what he suggested that the pilot do. He asked, Cactus 1549, if we can get it to you, do you want to try to land on runway 13? The captain responded to the controller's inquiry. We are unable. We may end up in the Hudson. What did the captain respond to the controller's inquiry? We are unable. We may end up in the Hudson. Now, was the Cactus able to try to land on runway 13? No, he said, we are unable. And where may he end up? He said, right? In the Hudson, right? He said, we're unable. We may end up in the Hudson. By Hudson, he meant in the river, right? The Hudson River. By the way, the temperature was -5 Celsius, -5 degrees Celsius. The co-pilot reads and does the emergency checklist as they prepare for a ditching. A ditching is a crash landing only on water. Now, were they preparing for a crash landing? Yes, they were. They were preparing for a ditching, and a ditching is a crash landing only on water. The co-pilot then goes on to state, following the checklist instructions: ATC notify, squawk 7700, said the first officer to the captain, and he acknowledges. What did the captain do as the first officer reads the QRH, the checklist? He acknowledges. The captain acknowledges by reading back, maybe repeating or maybe saying Roger or Roger that, whatever, but anyhow, he acknowledges, or he acknowledged. Then the co-pilot adjusted the transponder to reply on code 7700. Yes, he did. He adjusted the transponder to reply on code 7700 because they were in an emergency, right? In fact, they were in a terrible situation, weren't they? What do you think? Yes, they were. They were in a terrible situation. They were in a terrible situation. The captain then says to his co-pilot, the left one is coming back up a little bit. Now, what was coming back up a little bit? The left engine, right? The left engine was coming back up a little bit. It is the same as saying that it was producing some thrust, some power, right? And the co-pilot continues reading and doing the checklist. Distress message transmit. We did. Did they transmit a distress message? Yes, they did. And they confirmed what they did. He said, distress message transmit. We did. And what was the distress message that they transmitted? Remember? Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. That was the distress message that they transmitted. The controller then says, alright, Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31. What did the controller suggest? He suggested they left traffic to runway 31. He said, alright, Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31. Unable, said the captain. Was the crew able to do a left traffic to runway 31? No, he wasn't, or they were not able, okay? The captain said unable, and the controller was trying to give support. Cactus 1549 runway 4 is available if you want to make a left traffic to runway 4. The captain responded, I'm not sure we can make any runway. Was he sure they could make any runway? No, he wasn't. He said, I'm not sure we can make any runway. Soon thereafter, the captain asks, what's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro. Did the pilot see a runway to his right hand side? Yes, he saw. He said, what's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro. In the meantime, the co-pilot was also trying to relight at least one engine. But that was impossible. Did the co-pilot manage to relight both engines? No, he didn't, right? In fact, he was trying to relight at least one engine. At least one engine. But it was impossible. The captain had seen something to his right side. Oh, what's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro? Okay, yeah, off to your right side is Teterboro Airport. Now, did the controller confirm the observation of the captain? Yes, he did. He said, okay, yeah, off to your right side is Teterboro Airport. The controller keeps supporting the captain all the time. A story of heroes, right? The pilots, the crew, the air traffic controller. Amazing guys. The captain made an incredible, amazing, lovely decision. Cactus 1549, do you want to try and go to Teterboro? The captain responded, yes. Did the captain want to try and go to Teterboro? Yes, he wanted. Then the departure controller immediately calls his colleague in or at Teterboro Tower and says, Teterboro, LaGuardia departure, I got an emergency inbound. What did the controller inform to his colleague in Teterboro? Tell me, according to the statement, give an answer please. He informed that he had an emergency heading to Teterboro Airport, right? He said, I got an emergency inbound, and that meant that he had an emergency heading to Teterboro, right? Okay, go ahead, said the controller in Teterboro. Cactus 1549 over the George Washington Bridge wants to go to the airport right now. He wants to go to our airport right now. Check. Does he need any assistance? Okay, so what did the controller in Teterboro want to know? Well, obviously he wanted to know if the Cactus 1549 needed any assistance. The controller then responds, yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1? What did he ask this time? He asked if he could give directions so the Cactus could intercept the final approach on runway 1 in Teterboro. Again, he wanted to vector the Cactus 1549 so he could intercept the final approach on runway 1. Runway 1, that's good, said the controller at Teterboro Tower. Did he agree with his colleague's request? Yes, he did. He agreed, right? He said, runway 1, that's good. At this moment, the captain transmits over the PA, the passenger address, right? This is the captain, brace for impact. What does the captain transmit over the PA? He warned the crew and the passengers, right? He warned the crew and the passengers. This is the captain, brace for impact. And what did he mean by brace for impact? Well, he wanted them to prepare for impact, to prepare for a jolt. That's what brace for impact means. He wanted the passengers and cabin crew to prepare for impact. What did he mean by that? He meant this, okay? What did he mean? He meant this. By brace for impact, he meant prepare for a jolt or prepare for impact. But the controller wasn't aware of the captain's decision. He said, Cactus 1549, turn right 280 degrees. You can land on runway 1 at Teterboro. Now, was the controller aware of the captain's decision? Tell me. No, he wasn't. He was still trying to get the airplane on the ground, right? He said, Cactus 1549, turn right 280 degrees. You can land on runway 1 at Teterboro, Cactus 1549. The captain responded, we can do it. Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro? Asked the tower. We're gonna be in the Hudson, said the captain. So, the captain accepted the controller's suggestion, right? No, he said, we are gonna be in the Hudson, which means we are going to be in the Hudson. He meant the Hudson River, right? He wanted to say that they would land on the Hudson River and that it would be a ditching or a crash landing on water. I'm sorry, say again, Cactus, said the controller in total disbelief. So the controller promptly understood, right? The controller promptly understood, right? No, he didn't. He said, I'm sorry, say again, Cactus. The co-pilot eventually said, no relight, 250 feet in the air. Now, was the co-pilot successful in relighting either of the engines or either engine? Tell me. Was he successful? No, he wasn't. He said no relight, and it meant that the attempt to relight the engine was unsuccessful. He said no relight and 250 feet in the air. And what did he mean by saying 250 feet in the air? What did he mean by that? What did he mean by that? Well, he meant that the airplane was losing altitude and they were then at 250 feet in the air over the water. Cactus 1549 radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport off your 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. Now, was the flight 1549 still on the radar screen at this time? Definitely not. It wasn't on the radar screen, okay? It wasn't on the radar screen anymore because the radar contact was lost due to the low altitude. Cactus 1549, are you still on? Asked the controller. Did the controller try to reestablish two-way radio communications with the flight 1549? Yes, he did. He said, Cactus 1549, are you still on? So he was trying, right? He was trying. He was doing his best. But it was in vain. The captain was involved with the final steps for the ditching. Had the captain decided for the ditching in the Hudson River? Tell me. Yes, he had. The captain had decided for the ditching on the Hudson River, but he asked the co-pilot's opinion. Got any ideas? Asked the captain. Actually not, answered his co-pilot. Now, did the co-pilot have any idea? Tell me. Did he have any idea? No, he said, actually not. Cactus 1549, if you can, you got runway 29 available at Newark off your 2 o'clock and 7 miles. Was the controller still trying to help the pilots? Yes, he was. He was very supportive. This amazing team, they worked together until the end. This is what we call very nice, beautiful, amazing teamwork. So yes, he was very supportive, right? The controller was very supportive. Was he careless? No, he was rather very supportive. On the contrary, he was very supportive. Well, 2 minutes after the initial bird strike, the captain announces over the PA, as everybody knows, this is the captain, brace for impact. What does the captain announce over the PA? Do you know? I know. I expect you know as well. Exactly. He announces, this is the captain, brace for impact. And what did he mean by brace for impact? Again, repetition, okay? Repetition is the name of the game. Deep learning, focus on deep learning. And by repeating again and again. So, what did he mean by brace for impact? He meant prepare for impact. That's what he meant. Oh my God, a terrible situation, wasn't it? Yes, it was. Again, did the captain advise the passengers to prepare for a crash landing? Exactly right. That's what brace means. Brace for impact means to get ready for crash or prepare for a jolt or a shock, right? How long after beginning the takeoff roll does the airplane splash down in the Hudson River? Just a little less than 6 minutes, right? Just a little less than 6 minutes after beginning the takeoff roll, the airplane splashes down in the Hudson River. Was it a ditching? Yes, it was. Ditching is a crash landing on water. Ditching, not ditching. Ditching. After ditching, the airplane stayed afloat. The airplane stayed afloat, right? The plane stayed afloat like a boat for a long time. How long did the airplane stay afloat after ditching? For a long time, right? After ditching, the airplane stayed afloat for a long time. Fortunately, the crew completed the passenger evacuation procedure and nobody got hurt. Fortunately, again. Did anybody get hurt? Did anybody get hurt? No. Nobody got hurt in the accident, which is the same as saying that none of the passengers got injured in the accident. Did any of the passengers get injured in the accident? Did any of the passengers get injured in the accident? No, none of the passengers got injured in the accident. Okay guys, that brings us to the end of our listen and interact lesson. As always, listen to it as many times as you need and at least once a day for a week. Take care of yourself. See you next time. Bye bye.